You ever get that feeling that life is setting you up for some cosmic joke you're not in on? That was me last Saturday. I wasn't suspicious. I wasn't looking for trouble. I just wanted a couch. Our old one had been through too much coffee spills, movie marathons. That one time Linda's sister crashed on it for a month and left behind an imprint so deep, I swear you could still see the outline of her shape. So, after Linda kept mentioning how I should replace it, I finally took the initiative. I wasn't going to get something fancy, just something that didn't look like it belonged in a college frat house. Linda, of course, had other plans that day. Brunch with the girls. Because when you've been married for 10 years, you know that means two things: overpriced eggs and a bottomless need to discuss how husbands could be better. I didn't argue. I just grabbed my keys, kissed her goodbye like a dutiful husband, and drove straight to the furniture store, thinking this was going to be the most stressful part of my day. I had no idea. Now, if you've never had the pleasure of shopping for a couch on a weekend, let me paint the picture for you. It's a battlefield. Couples arguing over fabric swatches. Salesmen circling like vultures. That one guy aggressively testing every recliner like his entire future depended on it. And then there's me, wandering the aisles, staring at price tags that made me wonder if I should just learn to sit on the floor. And that's when fate, or sheer fool luck, decided to smack me upside the head. Adam? I turned, and there stood Greg Maloney. The Greg Maloney. If you don't know Greg Maloney, let me explain. Greg is the kind of guy you only hear about in stories other people tell. The kind of guy who peaked in high school and has spent every year since reminding everyone about it. He was that guy, the one who could shotgun a beer in record time, the one all the teachers warned us about, the one who somehow ended up in real estate but still acted like he was quarterback of the universe. I hadn't seen him in years, and honestly, that was on purpose. But there he was, in the middle of the furniture store, grinning like we were long-lost brothers. And beside him, sprawled out on a suspiciously luxurious sectional, was some guy. Mid-40s. Expensive watch. The kind of relaxed confidence that says, I don't stress about credit card limits. Greg clapped me on the shoulder like we were war buddies. Man, I can't believe it. You look, well, exactly the same. I'll admit, I had no idea how to respond to that, so I just nodded. What are you doing here? He asked, like I had wandered into a secret club instead of a store with giant sale signs taped to every surface. I motioned vaguely at the couches around us. Trying to buy a couch. Greg let out this booming laugh, the kind that made me instinctively check if he had a flask in his pocket. Ah, married life, huh? I shrugged. Something like that. And that's when it happened. The moment that would turn my day from mildly annoying to life-alteringly terrible. The guy on the sectional, Mr. Expensive Watch, leaned forward, laughing at something on his phone. And that's when I saw it. A picture. Nothing wild. Just a casual photo of two people sitting together in a dimly lit restaurant. Two people who looked very comfortable with each other. One of them? Mr. Expensive Watch. The other? My wife. Linda. I don't know if you've ever had one of those moments where your brain short circuits. Where your thoughts go from I must be imagining this to nope, that's real in under 5 seconds. I stared at the phone, my mouth suddenly dry. Greg, oblivious as ever, kept talking. Oh man, we gotta catch up. You and Linda still together? I barely heard him. My ears were ringing. Greg followed my gaze and chuckled. Oh, you know Brad? Brad. Mr. Expensive Watch had a name. And apparently, it was Brad. Greg leaned in like he was about to share the juiciest gossip of the century. Man, this guy's been on fire lately. Been seeing this woman, real classy lady. Married, but you know how it is. My stomach twisted. Greg kept going. Dude, he showed me a picture of her the other night. I swear, she looks kinda like your. He stopped. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Greg's face went from jokey frat bro to oh no, I've just stepped on a landmine. Brad, meanwhile, was still looking at his phone, completely unaware that his day was about to take a turn. I should have done something dramatic. Flipped a table. Yelled. Made a speech that would be remembered for generations. But instead, I just stared. Because in that moment, everything felt surreal. Like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. Like I had just tripped into the world's worst reality show. Greg, finally catching up to the situation, cleared his throat. Hey, man, maybe we should. Brad finally looked up. Saw me. And his smile disappeared so fast, I almost admired the efficiency. I nodded at his phone. Nice picture. Silence. Brad opened his mouth, closed it, then settled on the one sentence that somehow made everything worse. This is awkward. Greg winced. Yeah, buddy. Little bit. I took a deep breath. I had two options. Option 1, lose my mind in the middle of a furniture store, flip a couch, and get escorted out by security. Option 2, walk away. I chose option 2. Not because I was calm. Not because I was collected. But because I needed a minute to process the fact that my wife was having some kind of secret, cozy restaurant meetups with a guy who wore a watch that probably cost more than my car. So I turned. Walked out of the store. And left Greg standing there, still holding on to whatever terrible thing he had been about to say. I didn't buy a couch that day. But I did learn that my marriage was, apparently, on clearance. I stood outside the furniture store, staring at a poster in the window that read, "No interest for 24 months." Seemed fitting. I had also been living in a no-interest situation for quite some time. Linda just forgot to mention the fine print where my marriage was concerned. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was in that weird pre-anger stage where your brain is still buffering, trying to catch up to reality. I had so many questions. How long had this been going on? Who was this Brad guy, other than someone who clearly had too much disposable income? And the most important question of all, what exactly was I supposed to do now? Greg was still inside. Hopefully realizing that his tendency to overshare had, for once, served a greater purpose. I had no doubt he was currently sweating through his shirt, wondering if he was about to get punched. He wasn't. But I did consider walking back in just to whisper sleep with one eye open and then leaving again, just for the fun of it. Instead, I pulled out my phone. I wasn't sure why. Maybe to check if Linda had suddenly developed a conscience and sent me a "by the way, I'm betraying you" text. She hadn't. Shocking. I needed proof. Actual, undeniable proof. Not because I doubted what I saw, but because Linda was the type of person who could probably argue her way out of a perjury charge if she ever found herself in court. If I went home and confronted her now, I'd walk away somehow believing that I was the one cheating. No, I needed something solid. But how does one investigate their own marriage? I stood there, scrolling through my contacts, looking for anyone who might be of use. I wasn't about to call my friends because half of them would tell me to talk to her, useless, and the other half would suggest I get a baseball bat, also useless and mildly concerning. Then I saw the name, Trevor Benson. Trevor was an old co-worker. One of those guys who spent every lunch break bragging about his side hustles. The last time I saw him, he was ranting about how he was 3 weeks away from making 6 figures selling discontinued cell phone cases. He was also, as luck would have it, the only person I knew who had ever hired a private investigator. I called him. Adam? Bro, it's been forever. You still working that boring job? Trevor, I need a favor. Listen, if this is about those phone cases. No. I need the name of that PI you hired. Trevor went silent. Then, oh, shoot. Did someone finally get you in a pyramid scheme? Trevor. Dude, I told you, never trust anyone selling protein powder out of their car. Trevor, I think my wife is cheating. Silence. Then, oh. Yeah, okay, that's worse. I sighed. Can you give me the guy's number? Yeah, hold on. His name's Dean Wilcox. Real discreet. Found out my ex was sneaking around with her yoga instructor. Spoiler, he was 62 and not flexible. Great. Just send me his info. A minute later, I had Dean Wilcox's number. I stared at it for a second, debating whether this was insane. Then I reminded myself that insanity was probably not knowing and continuing to split the mortgage with a woman having mystery dates with a man named Brad. I called. Wilcox Investigations. The voice was deep, professional, and about 3 cigarettes away from being gravel. Hi. My name's Adam. I got your number from Trevor Benson. Oh yeah, the protein powder guy. That sounded right. I cleared my throat. Listen, I need to find out if my wife is, Wilcox didn't hesitate. How much are you looking to know? What do you mean? Are you looking for confirmation, or do you want the whole movie? Where she goes, who she's with, receipts, timestamps, the kind of information that will keep you awake at night? Well, when you put it like that. I swallowed. The whole movie. All right. I'll need some basic info, her routine, where she works, any regular places she goes. If she's cheating, she's got a pattern. I spent the next 10 minutes giving him everything I could. Linda's work schedule, her friends' names, the places she claimed to go. I even mentioned the furniture store incident, which Wilcox found both interesting and, in his words, sloppy. How long does this take? I asked. Give me a few days. If she's up to something, I'll find it. I hung up and took a deep breath. This was happening. I wasn't sure how I felt. There was no relief, no satisfaction, just a dull, nagging feeling in my stomach that wouldn't go away. I had always imagined betrayal as this loud, dramatic thing, screaming matches, storming out, a neighbor calling the cops because someone threw a lamp. But this was worse. This was quiet. A slow, sinking realization that the person you trusted most might be living a completely different life when you're not looking. By the time I got home, Linda was already there. She was on the couch, the old one, the one I had tried to replace before my entire life derailed. She looked up and smiled like nothing was wrong. Hey, you're home late. I nodded. Yeah. Took a while to find something I liked. Oh? She perked up. Did you pick one? I forced a smile. Not yet. She shrugged and turned back to the TV. No rush. I sat down beside her, watching her. Not in the way I used to, when I'd look at her and think about how lucky I was. No, this was different. This was studying. Watching her movements, the way she spoke, waiting for something, anything, that might give her away. For the first time in my life, I realized I was sitting next to a stranger. And the worst part? She didn't even notice. By the time Wednesday rolled around, I had developed a new skill, acting like I wasn't actively investigating my own wife. Turns out, it's not as easy as it sounds. Every time Linda spoke, I had to resist the urge to interrogate her like I was starring in some low-budget crime show. Where were you today? Who were you with? Why do you still own so many shoes? But I played it cool. Because if Linda was good at anything, it was detecting even the smallest change in behavior. If I so much as hesitated before answering a simple question, she'd immediately assume I had done something wrong, never the other way around, of course. She was a pro at flipping things. She could turn her losing an earring into my fault because I didn't check under the bed properly. She could get mad at me for leaving my phone on the counter, even though she was the one who knocked it off. So, I followed her script. Hey, babe, how was your day? She asked over dinner, looking completely unbothered by the fact that her husband was sitting right in front of her, mentally preparing to receive a report on her potential secret life. Oh, you know. Work, traffic, the usual existential dread. She laughed. God, you always make things sound so dramatic. Dramatic. Right. Because I was clearly the one turning our marriage into a soap opera. Linda, meanwhile, told me about her day in great detail, making sure to hit all the right notes: who she had lunch with, how annoying her boss was, how exhausting her schedule had been. It all sounded so normal. Which was exactly why I didn't believe a word of it. By the time she finished, she leaned back and stretched. Ugh, I need a vacation. Oh yeah? Where are you thinking? She shrugged. Somewhere warm. Maybe a beach. Beach. Interesting choice for someone who once spent an entire honeymoon refusing to go near the ocean because the water looked suspicious. I nodded. You planning on going with anyone in particular? She smirked. You, obviously. I smiled back. Obviously. And that was that. Linda went back to her phone, and I went back to pretending that I wasn't currently waiting for a stranger to send me evidence that could destroy my entire marriage. The next morning, my phone buzzed. Wilcox, got something. Need to meet in person. I stared at the message. Well. That didn't take long. I texted back, arranged a meeting, and then spent the next few hours at work pretending I wasn't seconds away from experiencing either total vindication or complete humiliation. There was a tiny part of me that still hoped this was all a misunderstanding. That Wilcox would show up and say something ridiculous like, turns out she's been secretly taking knitting classes. But no. That's not how my life works. Wilcox's office was exactly what I expected: a tiny, windowless room stuffed with filing cabinets that looked like they hadn't been opened in years. Wilcox himself looked like he had been running on caffeine and spite for at least a decade. He gestured for me to sit, then tossed a folder onto the desk. Take a look. I hesitated. That bad? Wilcox raised an eyebrow. You hoping for good news? Fair point. I opened the folder. Photos. Receipts. Time-stamped reports. There it was. Linda. Not knitting. Not taking extra work meetings. Not mentoring the youth of America. Linda, sitting across from Brad in a bar, leaning in just a little too close. Linda, standing outside a hotel, waiting as Brad pulled up in his overpriced car. Linda, walking into that hotel, side by side with a man who definitely wasn't me. I exhaled. Well. Wilcox nodded. Yeah. I flipped through more pages. My brain was processing everything in pieces. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't even particularly upset. It was more like looking at a bill you knew was coming but still weren't happy about paying. She's not great at being subtle, huh? I muttered. Wilcox actually chuckled. Some people think they're smarter than they are. I kept flipping. The reports were precise, detailing where they met, how long they were together, what time she went back home. Linda had built a whole little schedule around her affair, making sure she was never too far off her usual routine. Almost impressive. Almost. I closed the folder and leaned back. Well, that's that. Wilcox studied me. You taking this pretty well. Not my first disappointment. Fair enough. He leaned forward. So what's your plan? Plan. Right. Because now that I knew, I had to actually do something about it. I could confront her immediately. Throw the folder on the table, watch her scramble for excuses. I could let it drag out, gather more information, see just how deep this mess went. Or. I smiled. I think I'll get creative. Wilcox smirked. Those are my favorite kinds of clients. I stood up, taking the folder with me. I'll be in touch. As I left his office, I finally felt it. The anger. Not because Linda had cheated. But because she really thought she was getting away with it. That was about to change. I spent the next 3 days acting like a husband who definitely hadn't seen photographic proof that his wife was busy spending her free time with a man named Brad. It was almost funny how easy it was to fool Linda. Turns out, when someone is busy lying to you, they don't stop to consider that you might be lying right back. She was completely oblivious. Hey, babe, I was thinking we should do something special this weekend, she said on Friday evening while scrolling through her phone, probably texting Brad about how exhausting it was to maintain a marriage while also making time for her extracurricular activities. I leaned back on the couch. The same couch I was going to replace before my life turned into a detective case. Special how? She shrugged. I don't know. We haven't had a real date night in a while. We. The classic move. When someone wants to feel like less of a terrible person, they use we instead of I. We haven't connected in so long. We should really talk more. We should spend more time together. Translation: I need to pretend I still care while juggling my other plans. I forced a thoughtful look. You're right. We should do something big. Her eyes lit up. Yeah? Yeah, I nodded. Let's throw a party. She blinked. A party? Why not? Just a small one. Close friends. Some drinks. A good time. Linda hesitated, processing this sudden enthusiasm. I mean, sure. I just didn't expect you to be in a party mood. Oh, I'm definitely in a party mood, I said. Let's celebrate us. She smiled. That's really sweet, Adam. Oh, it sure was. The next day, I spent the afternoon texting and calling a few select people. I didn't invite just anyone. I had a plan. The guest list was carefully curated. By Saturday night, our place was buzzing with people. Friends, co-workers, a few neighbors. Linda was in full host mode, smiling, laughing, acting like the devoted wife who had never set foot in a hotel lobby with Brad. She probably thought this was a genius idea. A date night disguised as a social gathering. An opportunity to reset whatever guilt she might occasionally feel between meetings. Too bad for her, I wasn't resetting anything. An hour in, I spotted him. The man of the hour. Brad. I had no idea if Linda had invited him, or if he had just shown up because, well, some people just don't have the natural survival instincts to stay away from the house of the man whose wife they're actively ruining. Either way, he was here. Standing by the drinks, looking like the kind of guy who pays extra for seat upgrades on flights just so he can tell people about it later. Perfect. I grabbed a drink and casually made my way over. Brad, right? He turned, blinking at me. It was fascinating watching the oh no moment spread across his face. Yeah. Hey. I smiled. Glad you could make it. Linda's talked about you. His eyes darted around like he was searching for an escape hatch. Oh, has she? Yeah, I said, sipping my drink. Says you're great at keeping secrets. He coughed. Oh, relax, I chuckled. We're all friends here, right? Linda was across the room, chatting, completely unaware that her two worlds were now officially colliding. I nodded toward her. Go ahead. Say hi. Brad looked like he wanted to do anything but that. So, I helped. I raised my voice just enough. Linda! Look who's here! She turned, and for the first time in our happy marriage, I watched my wife have an actual, full-body panic reaction. She recovered fast, too fast. Oh! Wow, Brad, you made it. Brad forced a smile. Yeah. Surprise. I grinned. What are the odds, huh? My good friend Brad showing up at my party? Linda laughed, but it sounded about as natural as a politician apologizing for a scandal. Yeah. Small world. I sipped my drink. Very small. She shot Brad a look. A you better keep it together look. Brad, meanwhile, looked like he had just realized his whole life was a bad decision. I let them squirm for a second before slapping Brad on the back. Well, don't just stand there, man. Have a drink. Enjoy yourself. Brad laughed, too loud, too forced, then excused himself, probably to find the nearest exit. Linda, on the other hand, suddenly made her way toward me once the guests weren't paying attention. Her voice was low. What exactly was that? I turned, smiling. What was what? You introducing Brad like that. And what was with that tone? Oh, I just thought it was great seeing two people who know each other so well, I said, watching her face carefully. She forced a laugh. You're acting really weird. I tilted my head. Am I? She crossed her arms. What's going on? I leaned in. You tell me, honey. Something flickered in her eyes. A realization. A suspicion. A shift from I have everything under control to I might not be as smart as I think I am. I smiled. Enjoy the party. And with that, I walked away, leaving her standing there, wondering just how much I knew. She wouldn't have to wonder for long. By the time the party was winding down, Linda had gone through the 5 emotional stages of someone who suspects they've been caught but isn't sure how badly. First came casual indifference, where she pretended like my little stunt with Brad hadn't rattled her at all. Then came fake laughter, where she threw herself into conversations that were way too animated for normal human interaction. That was followed by stealthy surveillance, where she kept glancing at me like I was a ticking time bomb. Then there was subtle interrogation, where she asked me random, forced questions to gauge my mood. Did you have fun tonight? How's work been lately? Did you talk to Greg? Oh, Greg. If only she knew. And finally, avoidance, where she completely disappeared for half an hour. I found her in the kitchen, pretending to be very interested in stacking empty cups. I leaned against the counter. So? Fun party. She kept her back to me, taking way too long to adjust a stack of napkins. Yeah. People seem to enjoy themselves. Especially Brad. Her fingers twitched. What's that supposed to mean? Oh, you know. He just looked really surprised to be here. She exhaled, finally turning around. Okay, what's going on with you? I folded my arms. What do you mean? She let out a short, forced laugh. Don't do that. You've been acting off all night. I tilted my head. Have I? Yes, Adam. You have. The whole thing with Brad. What about Brad? Her expression tensed. I don't know. You tell me. I smiled. Oh, I don't need to. I have pictures. Silence. Linda blinked. What? I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen, casually scrolling. Let's see, here. Look at that. You and Brad. Together. She stared at the screen. There it was. The evidence. Linda and Brad, looking way too comfortable with each other in places she definitely hadn't mentioned to me. I waited. Linda inhaled sharply, then crossed her arms. Where did you get these? I shrugged. Oh, I just happened to have a professional follow you around. You know, the way married people do. Her jaw tightened. You hired a private investigator? Ding ding ding. She looked away, exhaling through her nose like she was inconvenienced by all of this. Adam, this is. Let me guess, I cut in. You're going to say it's not what it looks like. She hesitated. I nodded. Right. So, your version of the story is that you and Brad were just two old pals catching up over overpriced cocktails at a place that conveniently doesn't have a parking lot within 3 blocks. She didn't say anything. Then, naturally, since walking all the way to your car after a long conversation would be too exhausting, you both thought, hey, let's stop by a hotel for a quick rest. Her eyes snapped back to me. That's not. Oh. And of course, coincidentally, he also needed to rest at the exact same hotel. At the exact same time. And then, shocker, your car stayed parked overnight. But I'm sure there's a totally innocent reason for that, right? Linda exhaled sharply. Are you done? I grinned. Oh, definitely not. She clenched her jaw. Fine. Yes. I was with him. There it was. The words sat in the air between us, but they weren't satisfying. I already knew. The knowing wasn't the part one wanted. I wanted the excuse. So I waited. Linda ran a hand through her hair. Listen, things have been off between us for a while. Ah. There it was. This is actually your fault defense. Classic. I nodded. Right. So your solution was to sneak around behind my back? She shook her head. It's not like that. I smiled. Oh, really? Because the photographic evidence sure makes it look like that. She groaned, rubbing her temples. Adam, Wait, let me guess, I interrupted. You're about to say you didn't want to hurt me. She sighed. I snapped my fingers. Bingo! Linda crossed her arms. I'm trying to have a conversation, but you're making jokes. Oh, I have to make jokes, Linda. Otherwise, I might actually process the fact that I've spent God knows how long married to a woman who somehow thought she could get away with this level of deception. She exhaled. I didn't mean for it to. I held up a hand. Don't finish that sentence. We both know that's a lie. Silence. Linda pressed her lips together. What do you want me to say? I shrugged. I don't know, Linda. Maybe something original? Maybe something that doesn't sound like it was copy-pasted from a bad TV drama? She gave me a sharp look. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I let out a laugh. Oh, definitely. This is great entertainment. Linda looked away. You're impossible. No, Linda, I said, stepping closer. What's impossible is the fact that I actually trusted you. That I was fool enough to think we were just going through a rough patch. Meanwhile, you were out building a whole side relationship while making me feel like a fool in my own home. She exhaled. Adam, You what? You didn't mean to? You got caught up in the moment? You needed something I wasn't giving you? I shook my head. Linda, please give me something I haven't already heard from every other story like this. She stayed silent. I nodded. That's what I thought. Linda rubbed her face. So what now? I grinned. Oh, don't worry. I definitely have plans. Her eyes narrowed. Adam, don't do anything stupid. I chuckled. Oh, Linda, I promise you this is going to be very smart. And with that, I grabbed my phone, walked past her, and left her standing in the kitchen, wondering just how much worse this was about to get for her. She wouldn't have to wait long to find out. The morning after Linda's confession, I woke up feeling fantastic. I don't know if it was because I finally had all the answers, or because I had spent half the night crafting the perfect response to the situation. Either way, I felt energized. Like a man with a purpose. A man who had finally accepted reality and was ready to make sure his wife got exactly what she deserved. Linda, on the other hand, looked like she had been hit by a slow-moving disaster. She walked into the kitchen, hair a mess, eyes hollow, like she had spent the entire night realizing that she was about to lose. I greeted her like nothing was wrong. Morning. She hesitated. Morning. I took a sip of coffee. So, any updates from Brad? Has he texted you about our lovely party? Her jaw clenched. Adam, can we just? Oh, I think we should talk, I interrupted. But first, I need you to sit down. She eyed me warily. Why? I smiled. Because I have something for you. Linda slowly pulled out a chair and sat down. I reached into my bag and pulled out a beautifully printed document. A separation agreement. Linda stared at it like it was a court summons, which, let's be honest, wasn't too far off. What is this? Well, Linda, I said, sliding it toward her, this is me making things easier for both of us. Her mouth opened, then closed. Then opened again. You prepared paperwork? I grinned. Of course. What kind of husband would I be if I didn't make sure my wife could be fully available for her new, exciting future? Her fingers gripped the table. Adam, this is ridiculous. No, what's ridiculous is pretending that we're going to recover from this. I leaned in. You made your choice. I'm just finalizing it. She exhaled sharply. This is insane. We need to talk about this like. Oh no, I interrupted. Talking is what people do before they go behind each other's backs. We're way past that. Now we're in solution mode. She flipped through the pages, eyes darting over the details. You're serious about this? I nodded. Completely. She scoffed. You really think it's that easy? Just like that? I smiled. Oh, I think it's going to be very easy. She slammed the papers onto the table. And what if I don't sign this? I leaned back, crossing my arms. Then I'll just make things uncomfortable. Her eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled out my phone. And then I opened the group chat. The group chat with our friends. Her co-workers. Her family. Linda froze. Adam. I held up a finger. See, Linda, you spend a lot of time making sure your little side project stayed secret. But the thing is, I tilted my head. I don't owe you that secrecy. Her breath hitched. I smirked. I wonder how your parents would feel about this. Or maybe your boss? I mean, I don't know much about your company's ethics policy, but. You wouldn't, she said quickly. I raised an eyebrow. Wouldn't I? She swallowed. I didn't even have to send anything. She was already picturing exactly what would happen. How fast the news would spread. How it would follow her around forever. I held up the pen. She snatched it from my hand and started signing. I watched as she scribbled her name, rushing through each page like she wanted to be done with it before she had time to think. The second she was finished, she shoved the papers at me. There. Happy? I took them. Extremely. She sat back, rubbing her forehead. You're an absolute. Ah, careful, I cut in. Wouldn't want to ruin this moment. She glared at me, but there was nothing she could do. I stood up, tucking the papers into my bag. Well, Linda, it's been a pleasure. But I think it's time for us to move forward. Separately. She crossed her arms. So that's it? You're just walking away? I grinned. Oh, I walked away weeks ago. You just didn't notice. Then I grabbed my keys, strolled to the door, and left. And just like that, I was free. Thanks for watching. Please hit the like button and rate the story in the comments.